But when you say that a lot of countries, a lot of retirees decide to stay in their own country, the book also approached that. So, and it's an interesting overview, especially in North America with Canadians and Americans, and what cities they decide to go and what the cities can offer. So that's all specified there. And I'm going to dedicate a few minutes to talk about the book because I really liked the way you laid out, and I think there was a lot of work there, and you totally deserve to have it explained in depth. And I find fantastic the testimonials and the case studies that you found along the research of your book. And I really there was the butler, I forgot his name. Gary? No?
Thailand, wasn't it?
Yes.
Malaysia, Thailand?
Yes, he's in Thailand. So a butler, and he started his business there. So that brings me to this a new wave of retirees, as you mentioned, the digital nomads. So it's not about age. A lot of people are finding their independence, financial independence, and they are retiring from a traditional form of work very early, and they are looking for destinations where they can pursue a part-time work or a work that is not too doesn't take too much of their time from 9 to 5, or people just retiring because of age options, but we're living much longer, and so the choices have to include all of that. Where I can stay fit and healthy, good healthcare, of course, but it's not about finding a crochet group. It's about having a good sense of community, feel useful, and sometimes even build something in this new community you decide to move in. So I wanted to ask, and you bringing this information, according to the stats from the book, 10,000 people retire every day in the USA, and in the UK, over 600,000 people turn 65 every year. But they are retirees that remain active, and there are destinations targeting them with, there's a Malta retirement plan, the Caribbean, there's also some schemes and government benefits and so on. But I would like to ask, from your perspective, what do these new retirees can bring to the destinations? What are they building that is good and lasting, and it's very useful to the destinations that are targeting them? Do you want to start, Simon, Louise?
Yeah, I think it's already been mentioned about the economic impact. Certainly, new retirees, very, very desirable demographic for towns, regions, countries looking to expand their tax base, looking to create jobs. Retirees pay taxes, they spend money on local goods and services, they volunteer their time and money for local causes, and the infusion of their money creates jobs, especially in real estate, in healthcare, financial services. So again, raising tax revenues. And you just mentioned about retirees getting younger. I discovered in the research there was this what I call a retirement transition stage, where younger people in their 50s, early 60s are thinking about retiring. So they're starting to move, ready for retirement. They may not have actually retired. They might still be, like myself, working part-time, working remotely, digital nomads, whatever. But they're bringing money in, and a lot of them are coming in and they're starting new businesses. They're being part of the community, very important part of the community. Louise runs, she mentioned paddle tennis, but she runs a paddle tennis group here for, 160 people? And they're coming, they're spending money in the bars and restaurants. They're coming from other towns into our village to spend money because they're the new retiree. They're the baby boomers with Zoomers. They want to be active. They want to be part of the community. And research has shown is if they become a part of the community, retirees, they're much more likely to stay than if they stay isolated in their own little community of expats. So I think, countries, destinations have realized that this is a very, very attractive target market. you have anything to add?
You
know, and a lot of them of creating, they've realized the concerns of the new retirees, and Louise mentioned the healthcare. So they're creating very sophisticated healthcare systems. So countries that in the past you might not have thought of, Costa Rica, for example, having good healthcare. Now sometimes it's better healthcare than it is in the US. In fact, you've got a lot of medical tourists coming down from Canada and the US to Costa Rica for medical treatment because it's better, much more affordable than in the US. So these destinations are catering to the demands of the new retiree.
Definitely, and that I'd like to add that the International Living's World Best Place to Retire in 2022, which was released in January, include Panama first, Costa Rica second, third Mexico, fourth Portugal, fifth Ecuador, sixth Colombia, and then followed by France, Malta, Spain, and Uruguay. So I'll just want to bring our next question here because the book mentions a lot where US retirees go, and I know that Panama and Costa Rica tend to be a choice for them because it's closer to home. They can travel by plane. I mean, not travel by plane. I mean, direct flights. I will talk about Portugal, but a bit later. I just want to understand a bit more because our audience, we have a lot of North Americans in our audience, so it's good for them to understand what they can expect in these destinations, such as the top ones for the international living places. So Panama, Costa Rica, and Mexico, are they natural destinations to US retirees just because of proximity, or they are also offering a good package to them?
Yeah, I think, traditionally North Americans have tended to look towards the more prosperous and stable countries of Latin America. They're easy to reach from the US and Canada. Language and cultures are familiar. The weather's perfect. Cost of living is comparatively low. And what's important, the expat communities already exist there. We visited a place in Ecuador a few years ago called Cuenca, which was, I think there's 10,000 Americans retired there. It's astonishing. So there's already that community there for people to visit. But what we've seen in the last decade or so is North America's moving a little bit further. Moving towards Europe, moving towards France, Portugal, Spain, other parts of the world, even Asia. They're looking towards Asia because of that accessibility. But I think one thing that's important for most retirees is the proximity to family and friends, and that means it has to be accessible. It has to be a good transportation system, and that's why I think Latin America has favoured. Is still the number one destination for Americans over Europe because of that accessibility. Do you have anything to add on that?
Well, Portugal, obviously, now it's been discovered by Americans and Canadians. And I promise you, 10 years ago, some didn't know where it was. They have now realized it's actually the first airport that from their direction, as you come into Europe. And so flying into Lisbon has become such a normal thing. We this year, we have so many American and Canadian friends.
Well, we're having a barbecue on Saturday just for our American friends.
They're all coming over now.
Can I come?
They fly straight into Lisbon. They don't bother anymore to fly via Heathrow or Gatwick and then do, a European ferry. They're flying straight to Lisbon, and there are more flights that are doing that. More hubs around North America that they can do that via, and it's their first port of call. And they've got certain places in mind, like Lisbon itself. Porto is another big one, and the Algarve is the other big one. So they've all got a kind of itinerary. But this is so new for Portugal to have this North American sort of focus, but it is the biggest market for them to attract retirees to move over, and it's palpable around our village, which is called Praia de Luz, and it's sort of 10 minutes outside a bigger town called Lagos, and suddenly you're hearing American accents and Canadian accents everywhere, and I'm not sure if it's an outcome of the pandemic and the lockdowns, where everyone was watching. The only thing they could do for travel was watch travel shows. Maybe the travel shows, were really good covering Portugal. Yeah. Certainly, ever since the surfers discovered the big waves up in the north of Portugal that were more likely for them to get, records than Hawaii. That has turned a lot of the surf media attention towards Portugal. And on the back of that, there's been a lot of media attention in terms of wine tourism, cultural and heritage tourism, and, just the lifestyle. So it's been a gradual thing over the last 10 years or so. But
yeah, and I think it's important Louise mentioned the pandemic, because I think that has exacerbated this trend towards retiring a little bit earlier, reevaluating lifestyles, perhaps, moving outside of because they realized during lockdown they didn't actually like where they were living, and maybe we want to move somewhere else and where it's more comfortable. And I think so there seems to have been, and those countries that dealt well with the pandemic, that were perceived to be safe, like Portugal, I think have done better and will do better in the long term, attracting retirees, because they're seen as stable, seen as safe, seen as just somewhere I want to live.
Yeah, and another thing is that how a country dealt with the pandemic is now becoming a new factor in when you make your decision about where to move. Now, obviously, when we wrote our book, it was just before the pandemic, so that wasn't a subcategory in our chapters, but it probably would be now, because people are looking more favorably on certain countries, depending on the kind of mayhem that was created during the pandemic. And Portugal came out very high on this in terms of, a very, very quick and strong uptake of the vaccine, and the government was sort of more social welfare focused than profits, and just a general feeling that there was a lot of safety, and it would be a kind of nice place as a retreat from the world's problems. That certainly came out of the pandemic, and they call it the halo effect. When somebody deals well with something that's going wrong, but they deal well with it, they get a halo, and that attracts people's attention thereafter.
Yeah, definitely. I do. I'm not retired here. I'm working, but I do. I moved from the UK to Portugal in the midst of the pandemic, and simply because I realized that I could do my work from here, and still keep my ties with the UK, and it was a very international country. My daughter would still speak English every day, and also add another very interesting language to her portfolio. So I think it was definitely a fantastic move. But I also want to look into Susanne's story as well, because you moved from the US to Portugal, since we're talking about Portugal. And I don't know what was the case with Simon and Louise, but I guess, don't know if you moved to here before Brexit, and then, just want to understand visas and how you do, how do you move to Portugal? Because Portugal has the golden visa program. Maybe with the pandemic, there's also the D7. And the reason why I'm saying that is because people realize they don't need a visa to stay a couple of months here and then a couple of months back home. They could relocate, but still do that bit of work from there, to their country, but remotely. And the D7 visa might be just like the perfect fit for them. So what was the case with you, Susanne? Did you move with a golden visa? How did you go through that requirements?
So I